Hello, everyone, and welcome to our leadership panel on NDE 4.0. We have 5 industry leaders joining us today: Ripi Singh, Johannes Vrana, Bernd Valeske, Karen Smith, and Marybeth Micelli. Welcome, everyone, and please introduce yourself briefly before we get started.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good morning to the West Coast US. My name is Ripi Singh. I'm an innovation coach. I come at NDE from the perspective of digitalization of the inspection systems. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Johannes Vrana, and I'm looking at NDE 4.0 really from an international scale. I'm running for the ICNDT, the SIG for NDE 4.0, and we will be organizing the first international conference on NDE 4.0 in April 2021. And in April 2022, we will repeat the same, but 2021 it will be virtually, and 2022 we'll meet face-to-face. See you all in Munich.
Thank you, Bernd.
So, hello everybody. My name is Bernd Valeske, also from Germany, and I'm Vice Director of the Research Institute here in Germany, Fraunhofer Institute for Non-Destructive Testing. I have about 20 years history in NDT, and since about 4 or 5 years, it's our vision to deal with cognitive sensor systems as the future of NDT, and more or less this was heading us towards the NDE 4.0 topic. And NDE 4.0 is also, I'm the chairman of the expert group here in Germany for the German Society for Non-Destructive Testing for the field of NDE 4.0.
Thank you. Karen?
Sure. My name is Karen Smith. I'm the president of Olympus Scientific Solutions Americas. I've been in the NDT business for the last 33 years. Mostly in the field of ultrasound, eddy current, and X-ray fluorescence. And so in terms of NDE 4.0, of course, Olympus is trying to listen very carefully to the needs to make sure that we can be doing the things we need to do in terms of innovation and solutions as a solutions provider as best as we can to the industry. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Marybeth.
Hi, I'm Marybeth Micelli. I'm the president of Micelli Infrastructure Consulting, which is a consulting firm that works on technology transfer and emerging technologies for structural health monitoring of bridges and advanced NDT of bridges. I'm also the principal of the We NDT Marketing Network and the executive director of NDTMA. And so I think that fills all of my time, just my title. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Marybeth. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to start off the question today with a general discussion question. For the attendees, please feel free to enter more questions into the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be keeping an eye out for those. So we're going to start off today with the question, how has COVID-19 affected people's views on NDE 4.0?
Well, I guess I'll start off a little bit. I just gave really a talk on this, the President's Honor Lecture for the British Institute of Non-Destructive Testing back in September. And I'll say the crux of the presentation really had to do with people's awareness of resiliency. So for a long time, we were really focused on the efficiency of a company. And when COVID hit, we really became very aware of how resilient our companies were. And by the fact that we needed to be more resilient, it has opened up people to take a hard look at NDE 4.0 and how that adds to the resiliency of a company. Ultimately, the efficiency also, but really makes the company more resilient to change, especially in the workforce, in terms of having to do shift work or having to have social distancing, and being able to maintain throughput, and how NDE 4.0 has really lent itself to allowing that for some of these companies. And it also opens the company up to justifying investment in those type systems in order to, again, maintain the throughput through all sorts of different challenges that we're facing during COVID.
I think if we think about digitalization, it was going on now for already a couple of years. I think it was 2011, Industry 4.0 was announced at Hannover Messe, but it was a development over all the years. What we see now with COVID, it will be a revolution. It will really impact our whole industry. And if we do not get into that field of digitalization, it will not anymore a competitive advantage to get in digitalization. It will just be, yeah, you will be out of the market if you don't do it. That will be kind of the situation.
You know, the entire Industry 4.0 technology suite, the COVID gave it a push. The kind of stuff I used to talk to my clients saying, you know, by 2025, you need to be there. By 2030, you need to be there. Suddenly that seemed like coming down to, you need to be there now. You cannot wait till 2025. With robotics and automation, you know, if you want to go towards low touch and you can't travel, anything that you can do remotely, suddenly people felt, oh, you know what? I need that piece of technology. People are also beginning to see value in artificial intelligence-based decision-making. It may not have come to them from NDE side. It may be coming from the medical side. It may be coming from how COVID spread, how predictive analytics helped them. You know, it opened up the mind. Everybody was like, okay, this fourth industrial revolution is outside the box. But what COVID did was it actually crushed your box. It pushed everybody outside the box anyway. And you had no choice but to grab onto something that'll pull you towards where you want to be. And it shows up. And just a case in point, back in May, we just had a conversation on Zoom. We invited 60 people to talk about NDE 4.0 and COVID. We actually ran 4 sessions on how it impacted each one of them. And at the end of 4 sessions, people were saying, we need to have session 5, we need to have session 6. We actually need a roadmap that we could all leverage off of. So we're now making a global effort on creating guidance around how to adopt it and embrace it. I think people's willingness to accept change has gone a whole lot up. And people's awareness that this will solve the problem has gone up a whole lot, another level up. And what Marybeth mentioned, you know, leadership is now willing to accept the change much more easier than it was up until last year.
Yes, I would strongly support this opinion, because it was like a catalytic effect, what we have seen, and it's has supported the paradigm shift in thinking what is the future of NDT, and more or less it was showing us or giving us awareness of the requirements for the change towards NDT of the future, and the more or less strongly needed revolution in NDT for the future developments, and the awareness for change and the requirements for change were strongly supported by these developments during the COVID-19 crisis.
And I can just add that I agree with all of that. And for us, you know, the concepts, you know, we roll them around for a long time, thinking they're, you know, coming in our future somewhere. And the difference now is that we need them yesterday instead of further in the future. So it's a whole time shift in your brain. And I think it's great. But the challenge is also that we're all struggling because of COVID to be able to have enough money actually to invest in all the things that we know we need to do. And I just have to be honest about that, but we have to do this. So we've got to find a way to keep investing and keep innovating right now, because we need it now. And so we can't delay these projects and so we've got to find a way. So from where I sit, it's just what we think about all the time, is continuing forward, even though we're in tough times, even, you know, from a business perspective, we've got to prioritize this.
Thank you all. We do have a question popped up here, and maybe if I could have one volunteer give a quick summary on what NDE 3.0 was and the components that differ in Industry 4.0.
Yeah, I guess I can jump into this right away. NDE 3.0 was just using digital NDE, just using a digital ultrasonic instrument, a digital radiography. NDE 4.0 will be digitalization. So not only using digital information like scanning a PDF or scanning something and converting it into a PDF, but having really a digital workflow and then having everything connected with each other, giving the data or using an AI, giving the data to Industry 4.0, everything using digital systems. So really the interconnection of all those systems and the use of emerging technologies, that's NDE 4.0.
Thank you, Johannes. We had another couple questions pop up that actually are closely related to each other. What do you think is the biggest challenge related to digital transformation at the present and in the future? So we're talking about challenges. This other question is, in the context of advocating for NDT 4.0 in a large organization, how would you approach management when they have yet to grapple with Industry 4.0 in other areas of the organization?
I would ask the CEO if he knows the cost of not adopting NDE 4.0.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, it's really what I was talking about before, resiliency. It's now it needs to be part of your business continuity planning, right? So everybody has to have a business continuity plan to get any sort of contract these days. And if you don't have a business continuity plan in place at this point, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to have it in place. And NDE 4.0 needs to be a really critical piece of that because it allows you to adapt to man-made disasters, natural disasters, viruses, whatever's coming our way. Incorporating NDE 4.0 and technology into your business continuity plan is the only way that you're going to be able to have a resilient organization and be able to adapt.
I'd like to comment for a second on the challenges part, which is that something that I think is going to be challenging is that we now need to not just get people's heads around the technical measurement solution, but there's an entire infrastructure piece that we're not used to being able to solve, and it varies a lot from place to place, from user to user, from company to company, and policies that we're not used to talking about with IT and all kinds of stuff. And I think that that's one of the challenges we're going to have, is that it's not a conversation we're all experts in, like we are the base technologies that we've been deploying all these years. And so quickly getting expertise on how to have the conversations, or where in these organizations we need to talk to get people's head around what has to happen on the infrastructure side, because it's a whole picture now. I think it's one of the challenges that I see.
And another challenge I see is with all those proprietary interfaces, all those proprietary data formats we have in NDE, that is now what will be hurting us on the road to NDE 4.0. We kind of all have to open up. And I know it will not be easy because it's really a business decision to open up. And up to the moment, our business models were enclosing ourselves and getting our customers to buy the system because they already had one system and they had to stick with the data format. In future, they have to buy the system because it is the best.
A significant chunk of NDT industry is around regulations and certifications and compliance requirements. And there are a lot of businesses who just view this whole thing as an unnecessary activity, and you just need to comply with it and do the minimum and get away with it. So, unless until the regulatory bodies and the certification people, and they can up the ante and push saying, you know what, you need this. ASNT level 3, you need to understand what digitalization means to you and how you will embrace it and bring it in, and then bring it down to ASNT level 2s and level 1s. And same thing around, the whole industry has to kind of wake up. It's the biggest challenge is to bring people to see this thing as an ecosystem, and everyone seeing that I have a role to play. And if I play my part, everybody will win. So everybody needs to play their part, from the people who are developing NDT standards, people who are developing NDT equipment, the service providers, the training schools. One person or one class of organizations cannot push this front to a new level. So they all have to kind of understand that, realize it, come together and say, let's work at this together and move the bar to a level where we need to, because in the end, we will all win.
And just to piggyback on that, I think one of the big challenges is that all of these standards and specification bodies work at a pretty slow pace. A lot of it is dependent on volunteers and, subject matter experts coming together and coming to a consensus and, getting through approvals and getting through publication. And if you think about it, by the time that process is done, NDE 4.0 is way out over here. And so by the time we start to catch up, we have to find a way to come together and move things more quickly. And whether that means that these certification bodies are going to have to start paying subject matter experts to sit and really look at how do we develop these in a more rapid pace, because technology is moving so quickly now that we're never going to catch up. And we're never going to even catch up to almost 10 years behind, I think, at this point. Right. So I see this as a huge challenge.
Right. And that actually adds up another concern to the whole thing. If the regulations are behind the technology piece, and then you get into a situation where new technology comes in, there is no precedence, there's no experience, we don't know what the side effects are, and the regulations haven't caught up. And then the business drives people to make decisions which help them purely make money. You get into this realm of ethics, because you have no experience and you have no regulation. And the business drives the decision in a direction. Can we afford that? So that's another challenge that comes in. How do you deal with it? And inspectors will face it, consumers will face it, those dilemmas.
And from the scientific side or technological side, perhaps it's also this question of acceptance, psychological acceptance of these new things, these new smart devices, sensors with applied AI inside, and also the question of trustworthiness of the decisions made by machines, and all these things are developing in a very highly dynamic way. And we need some certification system or validation system. We need new ways. We need a new mindset of how to have procedures to validate the new things and how to come to some certification of the new technologies that are highly dynamic, highly flexible, and we then can support the acceptance by the users. We have a legal aspect as well, besides the psychological aspect, and both are a big challenge also for us from the scientific and technological side. But if we take the problem together, it's always a holistic solution needed, I guess. Yeah.
And we need to tackle it together, because if I look on the outside, a couple of weeks ago I visited IBM, and they presented to me a visual inspection system, knowing that this was NDT. So we have the big players in industry, or the big players in internet, who are seeing visual, X-ray, ultrasonics as data sources for Industry 4.0. They are selling it, and they will be selling it more and more. And they will not know that it is NDT. And they will sell it without a contract with one of us. If we do not get into NDE 4.0, they will be doing it, and we will be out of the market.
Yeah, and perhaps also our role will change. We are not only supplying data, we are supplying information. And we are working on the transformation of data, of raw data, entity data, more to process information and material information. And that's also some scientific and technological change that we have to think about acceptable or perhaps explainable AI in this step, coming from data to information, and is new research areas also that we have to deal with. And but I guess we should take the chance and we have the gold in our hands. We have the gold, and the gold is the precious value is we have the data, but we deliver information in the future. And this way from data to information should also be in our hands.
Thank you. We do have another question that relates a little bit to what you are all just discussing. Once NDE 4.0 is developed, do we expect or look for any type of training, qualification, and certification process from ASNT or other certification agencies for NDR personnel? Now, I know we can't speak for ASNT, but we can talk about maybe what is needed or recommended in your opinion.
For sure, we need new trainings. Yeah, of course.
No one wants to touch that one.
Well, the first thing is that NDE 4.0 and NDE 4.0 is not a destination. It's not a single point that you would say, okay, I have arrived there. And you can't say that the technology has arrived. There's nothing like that, right? It's a continuous digitalization and a continuous improvement and a continuous engagement of machine in the process, all the way from inspecting to going from converting data to information, helping take the decisions back, bringing the control back in, assuring the safety of infrastructure, assuring this product quality improvement. So there's nothing like I have arrived, I now have NDE 4.0. You can never claim that. It's not a station, it's a journey, it's a train journey. It's going to go on continuously.
And
Second,
I think
in terms of training, yes. I mean, eventually the training service providers are going to have to put the NDE 4.0 as a course. It'll start off most likely as a standalone training program. And then very soon people will realize that that's what it has to be. So it'll become a part of the mainstream. This will find the content of NDE 4.0 will find its way into each and every training in the next few years. And then once it's embraced over there, we will not call it NDE 4.0. It'll just be the normal NDE. I mean, that would be the standard. That would be the norm. And then people like me at that time, 10 years from now, will start talking about NDE 5.0. Let's not go there for now. But it's a journey. Accept it as a journey and treat it as a continuous learning and treat it as a continuous inclusion of content into whatever training program you're doing, whether it's formal classroom training, on-the-job training, or even it becomes a part of your execution. Your NDE system may come with, here is a system, here is a sensor, and here are the virtual reality goggles that you will wear, and you will be trained or rather guided in real time to do the job. So there is nothing like upfront training. You're just being guided to execute a work instruction. Some of these things, we don't know where they will eventually settle a few years from now. But my request to you would be, don't wait for it. Pick the pieces that you can adopt now and start walking along this train. And find a seat on the train and get on board and then push the train in the right direction. That's how I would approach this situation.
And I would just add that if you, and an easier way to answer maybe this particular question is to just look at UAS right now, right? So your level 3s or your level 2s are already certified in NDT. The smart ones during the beginning of this pandemic went out and got certified in UAS and went out and got certified in using specific robotic systems. And eventually it will have to be more standardized. But right now you've got manufacturers that are offering courses on how to use their particular systems. And so what I think you will see in the future are method-specific certifications and let's say machine-specific certifications, and you'll be certified to a specific UAS or a specific crawler or types of crawlers that, and you will hold that dual certification and be able to acquire the data and interpret the data. Or you will be pushed into one of those two. You will be able to just acquire the data or just interpret the data. So I think it's very important technicians and engineers to really understand that this is the time to start upskilling and be able to get more information on robotics or more information on UAS and move forward in that direction.
And perhaps also to be a little bit more specialized in one of the disciplines or each of the disciplines, but in total you need to be also some kind of system technician or system engineer, because we are always talking about systems. We are talking about ecosystems, we are talking about data systems, we are talking about sensor systems, and all is some systematic approach as well. So the future is being a specialist in some disciplines, but also being a generalist or a systems engineer, technician for all of the different aspects as well. So I think it needs continuous education and continuous learning and training, lifelong learning, more or less.
Yeah.
On a global scale, we actually also started working on a new concept for education, for NDE education. And tomorrow, during my presentation about the NDT global efforts, I will present some of the first results of our plans for a future for training and certification.
The question also had an ASNT perspective. As a chair of the ASNT NDE 4 committee, I can report this much, that we have a subcommittee on certification. There are 5 individuals on that subcommittee. When they make their recommendation, if and when those recommendations are accepted, something is likely to happen. What is that? I don't know yet.
Thank you, everyone. I did have another question pop up that's kind of related to what we were just talking about. And it is regarding what you see as the gaps in technical talent that will require workforce development, and how to identify that among very many competing tech priorities.
So I can say from our side that we certainly, as a product developer and a solution developer, we have some gaps, and we're trying to find experts in areas that we've never had to look for before. And it's not something we're used to being able to train for this kind of development technique from the inside, and we don't feel that way because there's not enough time. So we're looking to bring expertise that is not traditionally maybe from NDT, because it's not the problem that's at hand. It's all the other digitization and connectivity and being able to deal with that infrastructure I was talking about before. And so we're looking at places like Microsoft and IBM and other solution providers actually to be the partnership that we're missing. We're missing this gap. This is one of the gaps we have. And so we're trying not to reinvent the wheel, and it's not about the business I'm working for. I think it would be true for anyone right now, that we can't take the time to reinvent everything. There's just not enough time for that. So we need to look to places like some of the people that have been mentioned here to try to get us up the learning curve a lot faster, and join them in their efforts instead of trying to reinvent them ourselves.
I think what is also really important once we talk about NDE 4.0, there are already a lot of public activities where actually the big players are trying to work together. There's an industrial internet consortium. There is the International Data Spaces Association. It's kind of countless already on those activities. And we as an NDE community have to get into those activities and be one of the players and see what they are doing. And there are already a lot of solutions out there. We do not have to reinvent. We can just use them for ourselves.
Now, the talent side of Industry 4.0 is actually is a global uphill at the moment. It's not just one country or one domain. It's going to be there all across. It's just like computer scientists in the 90s and early 2000s. It's the same thing. So NDE industry as such not being very, I would say, loved by a lot of people, we have a double uphill to go over here. First, there's a shortage, and second, we don't have competitive salaries, we don't have competitive work environment, all that stuff. So it becomes a double difficult for us. But there's one thing that we have to accept. In Industry 4.0, the opportunity for gender equalization, the opportunity to have more women in the workforce is a big one that we can take advantage of. The digitalization, the fourth industrial revolution, actually brings a point where the female gender has an advantage over male gender just because their mindset is wired to work in a network style of it. Last year, I had to give a talk in Canada on this topic, and I did some research, and it was quite an eye-opening as to how the gender disparity started with first revolution, then it increased with second revolution, and it came down with third revolution. And the fourth revolution, it will actually go in the other direction. So if we were to tap into the talent, it's one of the areas for us would be to look for digital skills coming from women gender, which NDT has traditionally not been easy to accept and embrace. So if we open up our minds to that, we'll actually have an opportunity here to make a difference.
I like that answer.
Nicely said.
We did get can someone quickly explain UAS as it is related to NDT?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's unmanned aerial systems. It's drones. So any sort of flying mechanism that can utilize a number of things. There are companies that are using cameras, obviously, but also there are a number of companies that have miniaturized GPR, ground penetrating radar antenna. They're using LiDAR to look at surface roughness. There's all sorts of stuff out there right now that is being used on drones now that the capacity for drones to carry heavier payloads has come up. So, so if you're out there as a technician, learn to use a drone.
Thank you. We are able to go to 1:15, I believe. So we have about 10 more minutes. We have a couple questions related to management and company culture. We have one that says, how do we help companies change their culture to emphasize the importance of allowing their entire company to participate in these changes? The other one says, how can we explain to the management about the cost effects to make changes?
I can comment there if you want. One thing that I think is very helpful is to bring the voice of the final users of these solutions to companies to kind of explain in a rapid form, because we don't have the time to kind of get everybody on board slowly. It's got to happen faster. And one effective technique might be to get the voice of the NDT community to be a little bit louder in the way they can explain what the needs are, so that the extended leadership of companies can hear it in more concrete terms, instead of these kind of general, we've got to digitize stuff. Well, why? It's hard to get everybody's head around it. But maybe if there's a way that we can give education through the actual users and the people who need it most, I think we might be able to fast track that a little bit.
And I'll just add, so I generally work specifically with departments of transportation. And if you work with them at all, you understand that they are generally pretty slow to adopt anything. They're very risk averse. So our approach is always return on investment. And to be able to look at, here's what your investment is, here's how long you're going to be able to make back the money in terms of productivity and labor costs, all of that time and money investment. And as an engineer, that appeals to me because it's numbers and you can't argue with numbers. So that would be my advice. Always look at the return on investment.
Yeah, and it's really the point that we have to look into your company, what is really worth, where you really have the strong business case for doing the digitalization, the digital transformation. And this is where people like Ripi, who's not an NDE person, what he is selling with his consulting is really, giving or looking into your company, finding points you have to work on, identifying them, and perhaps in most cases, to my experience, you don't know what you have to do. I don't know it. And you have to have somebody independent really looking into your company to really identify the biggest business cases and then tackle them.
Yeah, and perhaps there's also, sorry.
Bernd, you go ahead first.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps it's also an opportunity to think about new business models, because we have a much more service orientation. We have perhaps the opportunity to offer entity data and information as a service. So we have completely new opportunities for a complete new world of services and business models. And I guess it's also something where you bring value-added services to life and to the entity world, much more effective than before.
I normally ask company presidents to make a list of companies that exist today in the world which are not using email. Because I think 30, 40 years ago, it was the same question that was asked, why do I need email when I have all these letters? And 200 years ago, we asked the question, why do I need postal mail when I've got men who can go on horses and deliver the mail? Who's going to use postal service, right? So the return on investment is one term, and I ask questions around cost of not investing. Coney, where will you be if you do not do it? Do you know that? If you know it and you're happy with it, we don't need to have that conversation, right? If you know where you will be by not making this transformation and you're happy with that state, I'm not the person for you.
Thank you. I think we might have time for one more question. I'm going to throw this out here. We had a comment in the chat. It would be great if NDE 4.0 technology will encourage more women to get involved in our industry. And what do you all think about that? I see a lot of head shaking, nodding, yes.
Well, I, for one, have never understood why more women are not interested in our industry. It's an amazing industry. There's absolutely no reason why women shouldn't be interested. So I think maybe because the topic will be a little bit easier for people to grasp, and NDT sounds scary or something, I don't know. But I think that maybe what Ripi said before was right, that it's going to be easier. It's an easier way for people to introduce themselves into an area of expertise that they may have. I don't know, but this has always been a great space for women, and I just think that that there's nothing that should hold them back from becoming a part of this NDT community.
I agree.
I will say it one more time, that women have an advantage in Industry 4.0 no matter where they go. I mean, whether it's NDE or anywhere else, they actually distinctly have an advantage, and it comes from mental, physical, biological, psychological, and the whole state around, women lead with heart and men lead with head. And this transformation needs leadership with both head and heart together. So we need women both in the leadership position, plus women in the execution piece, because Industry 4.0 is network intensive, and women know how to network better than men do. Women are better problem solvers. I can't stop ranting about this topic. There's just no limit. And to answer Karen's question, why there are not enough women in NDT, I think, Karen, we just never reached the tipping point. We just don't have enough critical mass. From there onward, it just snowballs upwards, and there are mentors who are bringing them up. It's just such a minority. It's such a small section that it never reached that 15-16% tipping point, so that beyond that, it's easier to grow. That's how I see it.
Gonna have to work harder at that.
So NDE 4.0 is about data and communication, so it's the best situation for women, of course.
I think that is a really excellent note to end on. If anyone else has anything else they would like to add to the conversation, we do have 3 minutes left. And
I would say I would go back to my favorite chart that I do at the end of every keynote. I say, if you're ready to get on board with NDE 4.0, bring on a chief innovation officer or a chief digitalization officer. If you think you are not yet ready, bring on a chief risk officer who will tell you how big of a risk it is not doing it. And if you want to close your eyes, go to church. Go hire a chief prayer officer.
I love it.